I bet you didn't know how much Philly sports has to offer. Your sports obsession just found its new home. Welcome to the Sports Porch Philadelphia, your one-stop show and podcast for everything Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers. Dive into game highlights, player interviews, and insider analysis. Whether you're tailgating at the Link or catching a game at the Wells Fargo Center, we've got you covered. So hit that subscribe button and never miss a beat of Philly sports action. Let's go, Philly.
All right, welcome to the Philadelphia Sports Porch. What'd you guys think of the new intro?
New
like
intro.
That?
It's a work in progress, but
Yeah.
I think looking very strong.
Yeah, I kind of liked it. So, Philadelphia, the Sports Porch Philadelphia is here, back. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. And of course, I'm going to drop the podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your freaking podcast.
There you go. That's much better, Schwaber. Of course, I'm your technical director, Chris. I actually like the music better.
We already got a comment.
Wow, fancy.
Wow,
yes,
fancy.
Thank you very much. Yep, very fancy. The music kind of gets you going, though. What do you think? And we have Rube down in Austin, Texas, joining us. He is an inspired Philly fan, and of course, a Grand Schwabini to my right in the studio. Amy May thinks our thing is fancy. What did you think of it, Rube?
I missed the music. So I think having a little music with that and then and a little bit more sizzle to go with our steak would be pretty good.
Right. I agree. You know what I think? I think I could take that video, tweak it a little, remove that music, and put our music underneath it.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
Hey, great ideas here. I've got an even better idea, though. Why don't we talk Philly sports?
All right.
Why don't we do that? So the way we do it, page 1 through today, page 7 or 6 or something like that.
Pages.
So we do this in pages. Page 1 this week is, of course, it's an Eagles victory Monday. There were 3 great plays we want to talk about. We might have some highlights for you. Page 2, we're going to talk about the coach, the embattled head coach of the Eagles,
so
Sirianni.
I figured we'd talk positives first.
Okay.
And then get into some negatives.
Okay. That's hard for you guys to do, I know, but we'll try to make it work. Page 3.
Stay positive.
We're going to talk about Jalen Hurts. Page 4. It's officially MLB free agency time. We had some fun watching the World Series together last week, and Juan Soto is on the market. So let's talk about that. Matvei Michkov, much to the chagrin of hockey Jesus, looks like he's turning into a rather decent hockey player. Got an award. And then you guys will have to fill me in on this Joel Embiid and Jason Kelce thing.
We will.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
So let's start right away with page 1, Eagles victory Monday. So talk about the game, guys.
So, Rube, good news is they won the game.
Good news indeed.
And so we're 6-2. We're a half game behind the 7-2 Commanders. It looks like the Cowboys are in free fall, and the Giants never really mattered.
Does that give you joy? Does it give you more joy, Schwabi, to see the Cowboys lose or to see the Eagles win?
Definitely Eagles winning is better, but I do also enjoy Cowboys losing. But I will say this, now when the Cowboys lose, it is a little sadder, whereas like before it was like fun, like, hey, they're supposed to be great and they really stink. And now it's like, yeah, they're just really bad.
Yeah.
I take a lot of joy in watching the Cowboys lose no matter what. I don't think there's anything sad about it. I go back to that 1-15 season Troy Aikman had. And I don't even know what the Eagles or the Redskins at the time record was, but that was one of the most joyous years of football I've ever watched.
I do remember that year that the Eagles sacked Troy Aikman 11 times in that game.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And how many times have we knocked him out? Yeah, he didn't like playing against the Eagles.
He didn't.
So Eagles victory Monday. Let's go over a couple of the stats real quick, and then we'll go over some of the highlights because this game was loaded with them. Hurts finished the game 18 for 24, 230 yards, 2 passing TDs. He did have a rushing touchdown too as well. Here's the big thing. Barkley, 27 carries for 159 yards and a TD. And he also had a bunch of catches, like 4 catches for 40 yards or something like that. I don't have
40.
Yeah, I don't have that stat up here. But here's where I think things are starting to come together. And I was watching you guys texting. I unfortunately was at work during the game, so I only saw the highlights and I read the recap. But you guys were texting during the game, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in the following pages about some of the missed opportunities, the 4th and 1s and stuff like that. And it was like Negadelphia all over my text. One of the texts was, I don't care if we win. They need to fire Sirianni. I'm like, they're winning. It's the NFL. They're winning. Okay. And Barkley and Hurts are having a great game. And Devontae Smith is pulling the ball out of the air, out of nowhere, and scoring touchdowns. Well, and, who cares?
Well, what you have to realize, though, is that, watching it after the fact, it's a lot different.
Of course.
When we were watching it, like midway through the third quarter, it was 22-0.
Yeah, you could have lost.
This was an absolute blowout.
Right.
The title for me today, right. All right, if we're going to Negadelphia, I'm just going all in. Mm-hmm. Disaster averted.
Yeah, right. So
winning despite our coaching decisions.
Okay, so let's stick with page 1 though. So this is all page 2. Okay. So page 1, we have 3 great plays. We have which would you rank? Do you want to do 3, 2, 1? Or do you want to do the top play second? What you have 3 plays queued up here for me.
I think they're queued up in order 1, 2, and 3, and I would be willing to bet that Rob would agree with me on all 3.
Okay, so 1, of course, is the Saquon Barkley reverse huddle. We happen to have a clip of that right here.
Hurdle.
So hurdle. Pardon me. So let's take a look at that.
For Philadelphia, Hurts has time. Now locates Barkley out of the backfield. Barkley slips 2 tackles and picks up the first down, jumping up in the air to the 30.
I mean, wow. When I saw that I saw you guys texting about it, you and Steve and Rube, and I was just like, that is probably one of the most amazing plays I've ever seen on a football field. What do you guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Rob?
Listen, I think in terms of importance to the game, you could rank that number 1 because of the energy that it brought early in the game and really set the tone. Number 2 was, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that ever again. I don't even know why he did it, but holy cow, he did it. And I don't know how many people on earth can do it. Now, Negadelphia Rob says, geez, I hope that's not what caused his sore hamstring. right. And I don't want to see him get crushed when he jumps over somebody, but holy cow, was that athletic.
Yeah. I would say this. That's just my thought on it is you'll never see it again.
Yeah. I think it was a completely instinctual move.
Right. It was just totally instinctual. Now, interesting here, Steve writes, it's no immaculate reception or Daniel's Hail Mary. Actually, I would say the complete opposite of that, Steve. I would say the immaculate reception is more a play of luck, not skill. I mean, it hits a helmet, goes 20 yards in the air. Maybe it caught it. Maybe it touched the ground. And then you've got the Daniel's Hail Mary. We see that every year. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 of those every year.
Yeah, I would disagree with you on the standpoint of the Daniel's Hail Mary. He all he did was throw it up so it came down in the right place, and everybody else did the rest. The Immaculate Reception, though, I mean,
can we talk about something in this century? Let's move on.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to keep it this century.
Yeah, he's trying. He's doing it.
He's trying to take. We got a Pittsburgher trying to take over the Philly show.
We may have to ban one of our Pittsburgh hosts from the Philadelphia sports. So anyway, I think it was an instinctual move, but I'll tell you what, it was one hell of a move. I mean, who's able to do that backwards? He did put himself in harm's way there, but it was amazing.
Right.
Okay, so play number 2 here, I'm going to guess is probably this play right here.
Nick Sirianni is not a conservative coach, and they didn't like that one. 3rd and 22. Hurts looking end zone for Smith, and makes the adjustment. Did he get the feet in? Touchdown! What a catch!
I think the feet were more impressive than the catch of him being able to get those toes down once he brings the ball in right here. Watch how the left foot just goes dead to drag it across the grass.
That's concentration right there.
That's a hell of a catch.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, you're going to have a few like that every year, like the one from last week.
The guy from the Jets, yeah.
The guy from the Jets was fantastic. But the bottom line is, I mean, like there's only maybe like, I'm going to say 5 to 10 guys in the league that can make that catch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a great play. And at a time when they really needed it, to be honest, that's a time where honestly, I was just thinking just like, hey, get some yards to make it the field goal easier. I wasn't even thinking about that. So there's an example of where maybe some of the Eagles' aggressiveness actually worked.
Yeah, and I would put that in the plus column for Sirianni and the coaching staff, but we'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
So the third play, I don't have a clip for this one, but this may be those two plays were incredible plays. This was probably the most important play of the game, and this was the Nakobe Dean interception to save the game, because without that, they were driving.
They may lose.
They may have lost.
The momentum was completely against us. They're driving down the field. All I could think about was, I hope they leave us enough time to come down and try to kick a field goal. So to me, when push comes to shove, that is the play of the game, 100%.
I say no, simply because you'll never see the Saquon Barkley play again. It's kind of like this. Like, think of it like this. This is actually a really good parallel here. Okay, the play of the game when the Eagles won the Super Bowl was the Brandon Graham strip sack. That was really the most important play. But everybody talks about and remembers the Philly special.
Right. Well, that was the flashiest.
Right. Flashiest. Yeah. Same kind of thing. Flashiest here was Saquon, but then the Nakobe Dean actually ended the game.
Right.
Hey, for those of you watching at home, speaking of Philly, on the underside of my visor is the play for Philly. So
and hey, and Rob,
it's always close.
And I have to tell you, I mean, I'm just impressed with wearing the visor. We don't see a lot of visors around here lately. Doug was a visor guy. So
Peterson
Doug
was.
That's why we haven't seen a visor since Doug Peterson. I think Chip Kelly was a visor guy as well.
My wife calls those things emotional support visors. So, do you feel emotionally supported when you have that on?
Guys, I feel emotionally supported just by being around you guys.
There you go.
All I know about visors is they make me angry because it's not something that a bald man can wear.
Yeah.
And if they do, you're like, why are you wearing that?
Well, I mean, you can.
Well, you can keep
it. There could be an opportunity. You're just going to have to use sunblock.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Lots of it. Okay, so Eagles victory Monday. I overall thought it was a great win, only because I realized that when you're blowing them out, it's rare in the NFL that a blowout's going to stand. You always have one team kind of rest back and the defense plays a little softer, and they want obviously for ratings, they want another team.
And also it was a horrendous call not saying that Barkley was down by contact, which led to the game being in question at all.
Yeah.
Right.
I couldn't hear it because I was watching it at a bar, but I could swear that I saw somebody touch him before he went down.
Yeah.
How did they explain that away?
What they said was, so the player on the Jaguars gets the ankle of Saquon. Saquon's next movement with that foot is he steps on the back heel of another Eagles player and then goes down. And they said that they felt that the Jaguar player didn't force him going down, that it was his foot touching the Eagles player, But basically, nobody on TV agreed with that. They're like, no, the guy slapping his ankle is what propelled him into the Eagles player and making him go down. Yeah. So seriously, even like the guys that look at all that stuff, they're just like, man, I really don't understand this one. Like, even like the guys that they go to who are like the experts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mike Pereira would not agree with that.
Right. It was very bizarre. But
neither would Gene Steratore.
But it happens. It happens. Okay.
Hey, just before we move on, I want to note two other really good ones. Sidney Brown, great play to set the tone and get the fumble. And listen, I think from a defensive perspective, is anybody playing better than Zach Bond? He's interception. He's making tackles. I think he's been the MVP on our defense, to be honest.
Well, I'll tell you what is also Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are just showing you that, you have two young stud cornerbacks. You don't really need these veterans, man. Like, I like Slay and I'd rather have Slay out there than Isaiah Rodgers. But
I thought Rodgers played a decent game yesterday.
He played decent, but at the same time, sometimes you just got to put your faith in the young kids.
Okay, you're watching the Sports Porch Philadelphia all over the world. If you're watching live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, and I said Instagram again. And you can also follow the Sports Porch Philadelphia on YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch. And I'm going to drop the podcast right after the show in the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your freaking podcasts.
Page 2 this week. And now we're going from, we got a big win. There are a bunch of great plays. We're 6-2 now to, where do you stand on Nick Sirianni?
Okay. So I'm going to bring up a couple things and then we'll have, Rob respond. Okay. Amy May, by the way, is saying they have to fire Sirianni. Okay.
Well, and now, they always listen to her.
Yeah,
so
they don't, but it's a shame. They don't. So, all right. Now, believe it or not, Rob, believe it or not, I actually heard this statistic today.
Hit me with it.
The NFL coach, active NFL coach with the highest winning percentage in the league is Rube.
Is it Nick Sirianni?
It's Nick Sirianni and Andy Reid's number 2.
And you know who else is up there?
It's just insanity.
Do you know who else is up there? Sean McDermott's probably up there too. All Eagle guys.
So here's the deal. It's hard to argue with that. All right. But let's also take a look. I put together. I'm sure you guys probably know who Kevin Nagandi is. Kevin Nagandi is an ESPN anchor, and he is from the Philadelphia area. He is a big Philly sports fan. Okay. And he writes in his Twitter today, the Eagles' talent won that game. They bailed out the head coach. I've asked this for months. Where does Nick Sirianni make this team better? His decisions are George Costanza-esque. Just do the opposite. His decisions are holding this team back from being a serious contender. And I can't argue with that either. Can you?
Well, here's what I would say. After sleeping on it, and I was, Chris, you saw the text going back and forth.
I did.
I sat there with my head in my hands, drinking a beer, in a noisy bar, and people are looking at me. They're like, "What's the matter? You're winning." I'm like, "You don't understand. This game I should have been able to leave this game at halftime and walk away and think it's over. And somehow or another, our coach is trying to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory." Now, I've slept on this, and I have a couple thoughts. One is, a couple of those instances, you could argue it was the right call. You could argue, okay? Not all of them. But when you add them up and you look at the momentum that we took away from ourselves by not kicking an extra point or not having faith in our go-to play
or taking a point off the board,
or taking point off the board, or somehow or another, maybe he's just lost faith in Jake Elliott for some reason. Who the hell knows?
There's no chance of that. There's
And
zero.
but when you're sitting there thinking, what could it be then? Because this is kick the extra point, take the 3 points, and move on. And if you make the argument that when we're up 22-0, that hey, you go for 2 because what good is it being up 23-0 instead of 22-0? They could score 3 touchdowns and 3 2-point conversions and beat you. Well, if you're thinking that way, you're a loser. You're up 22-0, and you shouldn't be thinking about what if they come back and what if they do all these things and our defense can't hold them when they've held them.
Well, and here's the thing, and then we'll kind of get to your perspective here, Chris. So the way I look at it is, we know that a lot of these decisions are based or rooted in analytics. Okay. And also, look, you also want to sort of add on to that fact that the Eagles and their tush push, which is, for the most part, it's been a pretty unstoppable play. Last year, I think they had a 92% conversion rate on it. This year, coming into this game, they had an 85% conversion rate on it. So it's probably like 80% or 78% now. But, you put those two things together, analytics plus an unstoppable signature play, and you can understand why there's a desire to do it. But to me, what analytics doesn't take into account is 2 extremely critical things, right? One is momentum, which you had brought up, right? You can deflate your team and give the other team hope when you fail at these attempts. And then the other thing is reading the game. Okay. So in reading the game can be a couple things. So for example, when the Eagles kick that extra point and they're up 17-0, and there's a penalty on the Jaguars, and so now it puts the ball at the 1 yard line. Eagles take the point off the board and go for the tush push. They don't get it, and now it's 16-0 instead of 17-0. Well, what did you just do? At 17-0, the Jaguars need to score 3 times. At 16-0, the Jaguars need to score twice. It's just not logical. It's not sensical. So that is a big piece of this where it just doesn't make sense. The other one where it was 4th and inches and, the Eagles are up 5, you kick a 40-yard field goal, you're up 8. Then they have to go the length of the field and they have to get a 2-point conversion. You go for it, you miss it, they score a touchdown, they win the game. This is not making sense. You have to read the game and you have to think about momentum. And also, one other last point that I'll make is it doesn't matter what the stats say. Sometimes you have to think each game is different. So you look at, you've failed like 2 or 3 times in this game. Let's not keep trying it. Obviously, the Jaguars have done something in this game where they've got something figured out. Nobody's done it. I get it. But they figured a little something out in this game. It's not working. Let's not keep doing it. Let's not be stubborn. So that's my thought here.
I feel like I just watched the whole game.
Yeah. So Chris, what are your thoughts here? I know you hate taking points off the board.
100%. I think if you have an opportunity, no extra point is a guarantee, but it's about as close in football as you can get to a guaranteed point. So I have 100% always been all about take the points. It goes back to the older days of the NFL where you never saw any of this. It was like, and arguably you could argue that earlier in our football watching career, they didn't have the 2-point conversion, but once they flipped over to it, coaches like Gibbs and all that, they were still like, take the points. If you can kick a field goal, 4th and 1 on the opponent's 22-yard line, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, kick the field goal, take the points, because that's what wins. That being said, they won the game. So, and the earlier statistic you brought up, best regular season record in the league. Only Andy Reid is second. And I seem to remember Andy Reid as a head coach of the Eagles. And after a couple years of, just getting close, I seem to remember some of the same arguments, not the analytics part of it, but they won the game. He made some questionable decisions. And you're absolutely right. You never take points off the board. So maybe he got lucky.
Here's why I think it's a problem. And then I want to kind of get Rob's take on this. I think when you're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, you're talking about, a different level of expectation, right? The expectation here is to win a Super Bowl. Okay. And for my money, if you have Nick Sirianni making these kinds of decisions against a Detroit, against a Kansas City, there's no way you're winning those games. There's no way. And that's a problem. Like, I sort of think of it as, I know this might sound crazy, but I don't want the whole Andy Reid experience of, hey, we'll get there. Eventually he'll win one, maybe with another team. I'm not interested in that. We can win one now. We were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We probably should have won that one. I don't want him to lose a second Super Bowl and lose a third Super Bowl. And to be honest, it wouldn't shock me if he did, because I think we just need somebody with a little bit more of a level head. I mean, I'm just more of the belief that the record is the record, but the talent is the talent. And I mean, they've got a hell of a freaking team. I mean, you can't ask anything more than A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith at wide receiver and Saquon Barkley at running back and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Sure, there's maybe 5 or 6 guys better, but I mean, come on. You can't ask for more than that.
Right.
The offensive line's great. I mean, I feel like it's more the talent than it is the coach.
Okay, Rube, finally, it's your turn.
Rube, your thoughts. And I apologize for talking too much.
He's very maybe Schwaber should have your emotional support visor on.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to figure out the sunblock, but
we'll send him one. Yeah.
So listen, I have notes written down, and my notes say disaster averted. At some point, the luck is going to run out. Why do we have to why do our guys, like you were saying, Mark, who are super talented, have to make miraculous plays for us to have to pull out games by the skin of our teeth? Why can't we just keep it simple, stupid? Now, I'm okay going for it, but the whole read the room, read the game, read the situation, the whole momentum argument is real here. I don't care what the analytics say. Read the freaking field. We had our foot on their throat. They couldn't complete a pass. And Mark, you said it perfectly. We gave them energy and took it from ourselves. And with all Sirianni says about you got to play with energy and heart and desire, and you got to be there for one another, I get it, but at some point you got to be the grown-up in the room, and you have to stop saying, I believe in my guys. You know what? Maybe it just wasn't there today, and you make an adjustment, and you start making the right call. Now, the final thing I'll say on this is I do believe, when we were kids and we were watching football growing up, it was this guardrail, and now it's on this guardrail, and the analytics say do it. You saw Detroit failed it last year in the playoffs, right? My wife is still in the ceiling from all the fourth downs that Campbell went for. I just think you got to read the room, and if it works great. But if you are reading the situation and it's not there, take the points and move on. That's all I have to say. I'm not ready to fire the guy yet, but goodness gracious, we are saving our players just due to the talent, are saving him.
Yeah, you know what, Rube, that's a good point. At some point, the talent on the field has to overtake the idea of analytics, and you just and the entire energy, like you were saying, Schwaber, both of you, the momentum. When you make a call like that and the momentum shifts, that's a huge thing in the NFL. It's a huge thing. And every team at some point in any blowout has a moment. The team that is getting blown out, every single one of those teams has a moment, and it may only be one moment, but they have a moment where they think, ooh, we could get back in this. And that's a dangerous moment. Mm-hmm. So when you take even 1 point off the board, you are giving them, by default, a moment. Ooh, that's one less point. So I'm with you. I don't think Sirianni is a horrible head coach at all. But I think somebody needs to take him aside there and have a discussion with him about this. But that's the way he runs things, and we'll see. We'll see.
I think Amy actually has an interesting point here that I'll put up here. He doesn't learn from his mistakes. One game, his decisions will make them lose the game. Yeah. And actually, right. And actually, you know what? He lost the game against Atlanta.
Yeah.
By not running the ball.
Yep.
And that's all you had to do.
Yep. Now, Steve says Jake Elliott has been a dud this year. You worried about that?
Not at all. First of all, I don't think he's been a dud.
I don't think we've used him.
He doesn't kick.
Yeah. We put him in impossible freaking situations. Right. That's the thing that really pissed me off yesterday is why are you going for giving them a half a field and trying to kick a 57-yarder instead of pinning them back and putting your defense on the field and holding them? I thought that was ridiculous.
Yep. Okay, let's go to page 3 here because we're fast approaching. We've been 32 minutes on the Eagles, and we got a lot more Philly sports to go here. But page 3, Jalen, and I'm going to put up a graphic here. Is he back to his 2022 form? Schwab, you want to speak to this graphic?
So this is a question here for Rube. You got Jalen throwing over the middle, hitting his checkdowns, protecting the football. 4 games, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. The lowest passing rating was 119.3. This also doesn't include 6 rushing touchdowns as well, and I think like 126 yards rushing. So I think the old Jalen is back. I mean, I really do. I think he's playing much smarter football, and part of this. Now, I will give the coaching staff some credit here. This is where you make Saquon Barkley your focal point. You got AJ and Devontae for your big plays. And let's just keep it simple. Let's control the ball. Let's keep the defense off the field. Now that the defense has been off the field, they're playing phenomenal. I think they in the last 4 games, they've only given up 4 touchdowns total. So they're really playing some good D. And I think part of that is because they're playing 1 less quarter than the other team. So I think that this is the kind of way that you have to play with Jalen. You can't just have him sit back there, 7-step drops and firing the ball 30 yards down the field the whole game long. He's just not that kind of guy. He's just not a Peyton Manning. He's just a very good quarterback that just does it in a different way. What's your thoughts, Rob?
Well, I like what I see. I'm not ready to say that we're back to 2022 or he's back to 2022. I mean, let's be clear. We've beaten nobodies 4 weeks in a row. So I like the habit that he's getting into, not turning the ball over, playing smart. I do like the offensive game plan for the most part until we get into the red zone. We were just awful in the red zone yesterday. So I got to see this against teams that matter. And then I'll be a little bit more excited. I'm encouraged. I'm positive. I'm not going to negative town, but I got to see more before I'm ready to say we're back.
Okay, fair enough.
As far as the form goes, in 2022, he completed 66.5% of his passes. He's at about, call it 70% right now. And he had 3,700 total yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was sacked 38 times. He's on pace right now for about 36 or 3,700 yards again, if I'm doing the math in my head correct. Probably close to 20 touchdowns, maybe a couple more. The interceptions, he's at 4 already.
4 is actually really good at this point of the year.
Well, right, but I'm saying he only had 6 in 2022.
Right.
But his
it.
long in both years, one year was 67 yards, the other was 68. He does already have 21 sacks this year, so I would say he's. It's hard to look at him now and say that he's back to that 2022 form, because you have to look at 2021 and you have to look at the year he started, 2020. And realize that in 2022 he kind of came into his own,
right? And
it was I don't want to say it was a big surprise, but it was refreshing. It was, oh my God, look how good he really is.
Well, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Like I think we're seeing a lot of, and I hate to harp on your boy here, Austin Rube, but we're seeing a little bit of that with CJ Stroud this year.
Right.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden CJ Stroud is now coming back to to reality.
Unfortunately for our fantasy team.
He's not throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns a game. And it's freaking annoying.
I seem to remember us throwing around the phrase sophomore slump a couple times at the draft, and we ignored it.
We did. The sophomore slump. It always gets you.
Yeah.
Listen, at least you know what this weekend reminded, Saquon has to make an amazing catch in the end zone to get in the end zone. I mean, the only way he can score is if we're 20 yards out and he makes an amazing play. And Jalen stealing all his touchdowns. So I was happy to see him get a touchdown. He was huge for me in fantasy this week. Saquon had ridiculous amount of points. But I digress. Listen, I'm encouraged. I think the right habits are there. Let's see it continue against teams with winning records, and then let's judge them.
Yeah, and they got the Cowboys coming up.
Cowboys without
Rush.
Without Dak Prescott, he is out.
Yeah, I would say winning in Dallas I'd like to see us win handily in Dallas to further influence my decision on whether he's all the way back yet. But let's wait and see. I'm not ready to call him an MVP candidate.
Okay, pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes.
Okay, if you're watching us live, you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X, the Philadelphia Sports Porch. And of course, you can always follow us on YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch. This is the Philadelphia Sports Porch, and it's a podcast, and I'm going to drop it right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts.
Hell yeah, he's going to drop it. That's what I'm saying, son.
There you go. Page 4. Now, moving on to baseball. Major League free agency is officially started. But here's the thing. I just want to revel in the Yankees' loss because
very enjoyable.
As a true Baltimore Orioles fan, nothing gives me more joy than to watch the Yankees reach the pinnacle of Mount Everest and then fall head over heels off a cliff into the icy below.
The abyss.
And that happened in the 5th inning of that game when Aaron Judge dropped that ball. And I was so joyous.
That was one of the worst innings of baseball you'll ever see.
I know.
And that is not supposed to happen to a team in the World Series.
It's not supposed to happen at all.
I mean, it was like they had 3 chances to get out of that inning unscathed, and they blew them all.
We need to get a psychologist on the show to talk about the psyche of these amazing athletes, which they are, and great players, and just what happens and what happened there. That was pretty.
But you know what? But I mean, obviously, more things had to happen. But honestly, I really think that World Series was won with the Freddie Freeman home run, the grand slam in Game 1.
Oh yeah, that was.
Cool. Talk about momentum. Talk about momentum. Holy cow!
Yeah, that set the tone. He was phenomenal. I mean, home run game after game after game.
Yeah.
So one thing I do love about Juan Soto, I wouldn't love him if he was, if I was a Yankees fan, but he's just like, hey, everybody's, I'm open to everybody.
Yeah, highest bidder.
Come on.
Yep.
So what do you think? You think Middleton is gonna wrangle him in, Rube?
I think we talked about this before, and my answer is I think Middleton will do it because it's sport, and why not? And we can afford it. Do I think it's the right call for our team? It depends on what we're going to do with everybody else.
Right.
Right. Do we need? I know he hits for average. I know he's a phenomenal player. But do we really need to go spend all that money when we already got two $300 million players? Um, I think Juan Soto doesn't put us over the edge. It doesn't fix the other issues that we have on the team, again, unless we're deciding to let some other salary and players walk. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think we're gonna get him. I think he'll either go to the Mets or he'll stay with the Yankees.
well, we'll see. I mean, I don't know where he's going to go. Nobody knows, and obviously it'll be his choice, right?
Yeah.
But I would love it just because, like one thing I can say about Juan Soto is he is part of the solution. The big weakness of the Phillies is that they're chasers.
Yep. He
right?
walks a lot.
He walks a lot. He doesn't swing at bad pitches. So he can sort of curb that a little bit, and also too, I mean, like, hey, there's a little bit of a difference between imagine Harper hitting with Juan Soto behind him versus Nick Castellanos, who I love, but still it's a total difference.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at this and the Padres tried this and he was on their team and they were mediocre. They were good one year and then mediocre. And then he left and they got a little better.
I'm sorry,
Chris.
No, go ahead. I didn't let you go. Please.
All I was going to say is my issue with Soto is what kind of attitude is he bringing? Because it's obvious from his comments that it's all about the highest bidder, which means it's all about Juan Soto, which means the fact that they lost the World Series, I'm sure as a competitor, he was not happy about that, but he seems to be more happy about the fact that there's going to be a bidding war for him. So,
well, but he did say though that it is important for him to be on a team that has a chance to win.
Well, of course, they always say that.
The thing that I would say is that when I just watched him hitting this postseason, I just saw like a dog in him. You know what I mean? Like he just gets up there and he's just like, I mean, I think he's one of a few people in the league that actually could make a pitcher feel a little nervous.
I think he makes them all feel nervous. Rube, what were you going to say?
Yeah, here's another slant at it too. Let's say somehow or another we get Soto and we don't make a heck of a lot of other changes. I think the pressure is that much more for us to have to win the World Series. And I don't know how much more pressure these guys can take. You can tell that they were gripping it tight as it got into the second half of the season. And I think all this talk of World Series or bust from day one at some point just kind of grinds at you. So I would rather see Soto go somewhere else, us pick up a couple pieces to help us with our weaknesses, and come back as a solid team without all the freaking pressure.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the pressure's there no matter what. We come back with the exact same team. It's World Series or bust.
But I think it's even more if you add another $300 to $500 million player.
Well, but think of it like this. Like one thing I will say was different between the Phillies, the Dodgers, and even the Yankees is our 7, 8, 9 hitters weren't very good.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I know it sounds crazy with the amount of stars that we have, but you kind of like need more stars. I mean, I think the thing is that when you have a situation where, like you go out and you try to find that good player who's gonna, hit for average and stuff. Well, you know what can happen? You can sign a Whit Merrifield. Like he was supposed to be that. Like here's a career 285 hitter. He's got a good eye. He's a veteran. He's been through the playoffs before, and then what? So he's like 32 years old, and then Whit Merrifield hits a wall and you have to release him. Like, now that's not happening if you sign Juan Soto.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably.
I don't know. I don't believe, especially in baseball, I don't think you need all the stars in the world. You need the stars to align. And I think we saw that. And I don't necessarily agree. We just got to find the right players to fit into the puzzle.
Yeah. And Amy believes that Mark, and she should know this better than anybody, is all about emotion, and Rob is all about logic. So thank you, Amy.
I have emotion deck on it.
Yeah, you do. But I mean, obviously, in this case, you're being logical, and Mark just wants to see Juan Soto in a Phillies uniform. So, and where I stand on this is that I think
you stand, Chris. You stand. Get him out of the AL East is where you stand.
That's exactly right. Yes. Or open the checkbook and let's put him in an Orioles uniform and see what happens. I think that would change that lineup, which was pretty good, remarkably. But where I stand on it is that the Phillies have more problems than their lineup. And the big problem they had when push came to shove in the playoffs was the bullpen fell apart and the bats went silent at the wrong time. Throughout most of the year, their issue really, I mean, would they benefit from adding Juan Soto? Absolutely. Would that solve their problem? I don't think so.
Well, here's the thing.
Not because the pitching still has to come through.
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm not saying add Juan Soto and be done.
Right. But if you're going to spend that kind of money, you probably are done.
Not necessarily.
That's a lot of money. No, I know they have a lot of money, but that's a lot of money.
If they do that, probably what they're going to do is they're going to unload maybe a Nick Castellanos. They're going to probably unload like an Alec Boehm, and they're going to bring in, those nice little, average hitters that Rob wants, and bring in some new relievers. That's what they're going to do, so.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I know we got to move on here.
We got to move on.
But Chris, to your point, listen, I'm not worried about the bullpen. I think the bullpen was an anomaly, an aberration, if you will. The bats going cold is a theme. We've got 3 years in a row of data points on that, and that's what we got to go fix.
Mm-hmm.
There he is, Rob, the data guy.
Yep.
Rob the analytics guy.
Rob Logic.
Rob Logic.
Okay, page 5. This is some exciting stuff we got going on here right now because, and I'll be anxious to hear Hockey Jesus chime in on this if he's still watching, but he might be a little bit embarrassed.
Your NHL Rookie of the Month for October, Matvei Michkov from Mother Russia.
3 power play goals.
Yeah.
9 points in his first month. Taking a lot of hits from some wily veterans. So I'd like to see us protect him a little better. But
yeah, he's been a little
very exciting.
He's been a little quiet the last couple games, but obviously star power's there. Just looking forward to watching his season, but. It's not going to be a good season for the Flyers. The goaltending, Urson got hurt. And beyond Urson, there's not much. I mean, we'll see how Alexei Kolosov does. And it'll be great if he could surprise us and maybe have that potential of a number one goaltender like some think he can be. But you can't count on that. And it's going to be really hard to win when you don't have really solid goaltending. So with Sam Urson out, we've struggled. So, hockey's kind of fun because of Matvei, but other than that, I think that's all I got for hockey. How about you, Rube?
Yeah, I saw a couple their back-to-back wins against St. Louis and against Boston and St. Louis. And golly, were those boring games. But that's the way they won last year. They were blocking shots left and right. They got good goaltending. We scored timely goals. And we figured out a way to just grind out the game. It's not the funnest hockey to watch, but when a guy like Urson does get hurt, and we know we're not going to the playoffs or the Stanley Cup, we're not going to make if we end up miraculously making the playoffs and we're not going to make a deep run, maybe it is a good time to see what else you got for goalie, and it forces our hand to have to do that. So I'm good with that. Like you said at the beginning of the year, Mark, let's let the kids grow. Let's see what they got. And maybe some situations will call for, hey, we weren't planning on doing this, but look what we found. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
Golly, Rob, that sounded great.
I think golly.
Yeah, well, that was Rube seems to enjoy that word a lot. I mean, I wonder if he uses it around.
I like a good golly. I do.
Steve, of course, he couldn't help himself.
Yeah,
Mitchie is okay.
The hockey Jesus is having a struggle with. By the way, if you don't know who the hockey Jesus is, he does a program for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he is really struggling to acknowledge Michkiv's existence.
Yes. He still has Sidney Crosby.
He's having
syndrome.
a hard time with it. He's really struggling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, we got one more category to talk about here.
The Sports Philadelphia all over the world on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. There I go again. The X. And Facebook. And I'm going to drop the podcast. You can go back, subscribe to it, please. All over the internet on iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. So page 6 tonight, you guys are going to have to, you guys are going to have to update me on this. Joel Embiid and Jason Kelce. What is the line? There's Jason Kelce. Look.
He is grabbing a cell phone of some random kid at the Penn State game who came up and started harassing him.
Right.
And so Kelce took the cell phone and smashed it on the pavement.
There you go. And Joel Embiid.
Let's talk about that one first.
Okay.
The situation with Joel Embiid. Obviously, the beginning of the season for the Sixers has been an atrocity of gargantuan proportions.
Wait, should we show the audience the list? Can you see the list?
That is 5 games without George, Maxey, and Embiid playing together.
And what was the bet? What was
25,
the bet?
right? 25
together. And they have played a total of 5 games. So we're 0 for 5. Now, good news. George is expected to return on tonight? Tonight. George is returning tonight. Good news there. But situation with Joel Embiid.
But this would still be 6 games, though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Situation with Joel Embiid, for those of you who don't know. There's a sports columnist, Marcus Hayes, and he wrote a pretty scathing piece about Joel Embiid, basically saying some stuff that, maybe some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, but essentially calling out Joel Embiid. Basically saying that, it's his job to be ready for game 1 of the NBA season, and he's not ready, calling him out for not being in shape in past seasons. But where I really think everybody feels Marcus Hayes really crossed the line was he said in his article that, if you don't know, Joel Embiid's brother died a tragic death not too long ago. And Joel Embiid often talks about the death of his brother and also talks about the birth of his son as being key moments, which sort of grounded him and helped him grow up and helped him become more of a professional and things of that sort. And Marcus Hayes basically said, you can't say that you've changed because of your brother's tragedy and the birth of your son when you haven't, and you're basically making, you're basically saying that you're going to leaving a legacy to them, and there's no legacy being left, that you're not honoring what you're saying you are.
Okay, not good.
So basically, Embiid basically said, don't talk about my family like that. And apparently there was a little bit of a shove given. Probably Embiid will get suspended for that. But I don't know. It's a tough call. And with Kelce, look, Kelce, I think you have to realize at this point, Kelce, you are famous. You probably need somebody walking with you.
He needs Big Dom. You
need Big Dom out there protecting you, because you can't go taking people's phones and smashing them. It's not a fraternity anymore. It's not, your buddies on the Eagles offensive line, you're like a public figure now. But the question becomes, and I'll leave it up to you guys to remark. I mean, how much blame do we put on the athletes here? Can we understand their feelings? Can we understand their actions? Let's start with you, Ruby. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think each situation you got to look at differently. And what's really odd is that you do have these two situations. You also have the James Franklin situation after the Penn State game the other day. I have Sirianni talking to the fans a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, or these people the benefit of the doubt, but here are my feelings. I think Joel's his own worst damn enemy. And while it probably wasn't in good form for this columnist to write what he wrote, um, I think Joel's got to own some of this, right? He's the king of trolls, right? And I still think he's got a lot of growing up to do. And so in this situation, you can speak your mind, but at some point you got to grow up and own your shit. That's number one.
Rob Logic.
Number two with Kelce, dude, you're a commentator now. You're not a football player anymore. You've made this awesome transition from football player to building this brand of of an ex-football player that's easy on camera, that has the every person who watches the game kind of beard, and their school of thought, and he's really good at it. But he made a big mistake this weekend. There's always going to be instigator frat bros out there, and he bit hard, and he's got to stay in his own lane. So I think he deserves probably to be suspended, or it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Or the opposite could be good for you. This is what we've wanted everybody to do from ever, and these people just can't keep taking shots at you and your family. And so those are my two thoughts on those two guys.
Is it my turn now?
Your turn.
Yep.
Okay. So as far as Embiid is concerned, I mean, the columnist took a shot at a very emotional issue.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to be upset, is, I think it, I think the columnist, I just think the sports guy should have thought more about what he was going to say. The timing was, probably not the best. And Amy May says they have to rise above the emotion, keep a level head. I think we all agree with that. But I'm not justifying the fact that maybe he shoved the guy. And to Rube's point, at some point you do have to own what you're putting out there, and then what your actions are. And yeah, he still has a little growing up to do, and he's working through that stuff. So it's not an excuse, but it's more of an understanding. As far as Kelce goes, put down the fucking beer. That will solve your problems. Okay? The guy drinks too much. End of story. Is there anything in public?
Do we know that he was drinking at that point?
But let me ask you.
He had a case of beer in his hand.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Right.
So, it's not for me to judge.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that I have rarely seen a clip on any social media platform where it is not, look at how much Jason Kelce had to drink and look at his naked belly. Okay? Put down the beer. It's time for you to grow up. You're being a complete asshole. You're in the public.
Really?
And yes, as fans, we should stay out of people's faces. We should understand that. Absolutely. But there's millions and millions of us, and there's only a few of you that are lucky enough and worked hard to get to where you are. Set a goddamn example. Nothing makes me angrier than these guys, especially. I do not like Jason Kelce at all. I do not like him.
He doesn't like you one bit either.
He doesn't even know who the hell I am, and he doesn't.
I'm sure if he knew you, he'd think you were a jerk.
Yeah, probably, but I'm sober. Okay, get yourself sober and do your fucking job. That it burns me up.
I will have the last word on this.
Please do, Schwab.
Okay,
of course. The last word with Bob Schwab.
I agree that as an athlete, you have to rise above. And you have to realize that there's always going to be people trying to take you down, and you have to be able to look the other way. That all being said, I don't mind what either one of them did. That's just me.
So much for that.
I know that doesn't mean anything.
Emotion over logic fails again.
They'll both be suspended and they'll take crap for it and they'll have to grow up. But at the same time, I'm kind of like just sitting there on my couch. I'm just like, you know what? Good try.
I'm not giving you the last word on this, Schwab.
Throw
what
that,
I want,
smash that phone.
I want the Sixers to stop being a freaking mockery. And it's just, we joke about, them not playing all these games and, saving them. But what it does, I'm just so angry and disappointed in the Sixers as an organization that I'm almost getting to the point where I'm going to be apathetic with it. This has been handled incredibly poorly by the entire organization.
But emotional Rube, let me be Schwab logic for a minute.
Please.
Hey, as long as everybody's healthy in the playoffs, that's what this is about.
There you go. That's what it's all about.
We just traded places for a minute.
Yeah, I know. That was really, really slick. Really slick. All right, guys, that's it for the week. Thanks for watching the Sports Porch Philadelphia all over the world on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And, of course, you can also catch the podcast right after this show. Well, maybe about after the next show, but right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or boys.
Wherever you get your freaking
podcast. There you go. And you can follow the Sports Porch Philadelphia at Philadelphia Sports Porch on YouTube. For Rube, the opinionated Philly fan living in Texas, the Grand Schwabini to my right,
the emotional one.
I am your technical director, and I am out. Jablonsk.
Well timed.
Thank you.